Peter, your mic is not on.
Hi, am I there now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. No, what I said was that we just found we were giggling down here in the Eastern Cape, rural Eastern Cape as we refer, that you know, in the northwest, Kobus and them internet connections are still running on paraffin. But yes, a very interesting session that we've just been through. And I also think that you know, this much more time must be spent on this. But watch this space. I think we will be on. This will be ongoing conversations, and it will really be insightful to take these different sections of Heal the Land and Heal the People and carry them forward. So yes, back to our discussion. All my panelists are on. Very nice to see you guys all involved. In the first picture, we've got Gary Jackson. How's it, Gary?
Perfect, guys. Hi.
We've got Stephen Barnard from Farmer Kids. Hello, Stephen. Hi, Irida. Gaan het goed daar by jou?
Baie goed, pragtige dag aan die Kaap.
Upsi, you've got your friend Louis there as well on the side. Hello, Louis. And hello, Upsi. Welcome from Joburg. Christian, you're on board. Thank you.
Hello from Cape Town.
Fantastic. Andrea, is jy ook op?
Yes, ja, ek is hier so. Good morning.
Hello, Andrea. And Tozy, are you there?
I'm here, Doc, and hello, everyone.
Fantastic. Who are we missing out? Everybody. Arno, are you there?
I'm here, Peter, but there's no webcam capacity at the moment. Apparently, the system can only accommodate 6 people. If I try to link my webcam, it's not great.
But we can hear you clearly, Arno. Thank you. It's nice to hear your voice from Bloemfontein. So we're all over the country. Yes, with no further avail, let's go into the session. We're talking about food with integrity. Now, as the preamble, I just want to make a few statements, and then our format will be, I'll be asking questions to our panelists, and then if we have time left at the end, we will come back to a certain panelist with interesting questions. Again, I see the questions will be going on the chat line. I think, pending how much time we've got left at the end of our session, we will perhaps go back to some of those questions. Otherwise, your questions directed perhaps to a specific panelist, we will then let that panelist address the question directly back to you. This is what technology does for us. So, as the preamble, chefs, retailers, and restaurants have an unparalleled ability to facilitate the connection and socializing between the food value chain role players. We spoke earlier, and also with the introduction, in terms of the disconnect there's been so far in the whole value chain. Now, number 2, we can't not refer to COVID-19 situation we're in currently. We all listened to our president last night, who have again adapted the regulations, and that has been actually good news for our industry in the food side. As has been referred before, farming has been excluded. We could carry on the farm with our production, but our value chain partners higher up, the restaurants especially, were incapacitated, and it looks like at least they will be coming into play again. There's a new normal, and that's what we're going to refer to in some of the questions. Now, the tendencies are also changing. Therefore, creative and innovative vision is needed. And this is especially one of our panelists is going to refer to the new change and the speeded up effect that COVID-19 has had on our evolution of the value chain. The fourth point I want to make is hyper-local items on menu will ensure local support of small farms. Now, sustainable, sensible, and toned-down cooking. This is what we're going to talk about, the connection with food. Now, what do we mean with food with integrity? Now, integrity is a is a fantastic word, but in relation to food, we are referring as Integra Group to farm and soil management. Now, the whole morning we've been listening, and Hendrik's session took us to the farms where we were looking at how food was produced with integrity, and that is all about how we manage the soil and how we manage our farms and on farmer level. Then it goes to the processing part of it. What, in other words, what chemicals are being added, maybe as to extend your shelf life, how it works, and then, of course, the most important for me is the traceability as to where it comes from. More and more consumers, and we've got Gary as a retailer involved that will touch on us about what he's got a real food shop, and he's a professional retailer, and he will refer to us as to what are the consumers asking when they stand in front of the shelf as to the origin or the provenance of food. Now, let's start off. Christian Campbell, I want to start with you. Christian is a sustainability consultant, a regenerative agricultural advocate. He's a living systems facilitator and a consulting chef. Christian, I can't share your whole resume here because it will take up the whole program. But yes, my question to you is, how do we achieve synergy and communication between producer and consumers via the food value chain?
Thanks, Peter. I've put a few words together which I'll go through. But I think I want to say from the beginning, I'll be talking around the topic of achieving synergy and communication between producer and consumer via the food value chain. But before I start, I'd like to address the meaning and the understanding of the three key words or terms used in this topical heading. One being synergy. This can be expressed as the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I think this is really well expressed to any of you that have had children. You had one child, you thought it'd be a good idea to have a second, and then you realize that 1 + 1 = 3+. So I think synergy is a beautiful expression, and especially the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Communication is a means of connecting people and places, and the word that I really struggle with is the value chain. I feel it's described as interlinked value adding activities that convert inputs into outputs, which in turn add to the bottom line. I think for the purposes of this discussion, I'd like to rename food value chain to food value stream. The word chain is a mechanical metaphor, and I'd prefer to use a living metaphor such as a stream. So if you can indulge me in my wishes here. Since the post-industrial revolution and into post-World War II, the food chain has been fundamentally profit-driven, a push economy model, producing far upstream and creating demand downstream. The product uptake thriving on the perception that it is good and that it holds value to the consumer. I think an extreme example to use here would be fluoride tablets, essentially a waste product from the aluminium industry that was marketed as being beneficial for growing children's teeth and bone health. Most mothers in the 70s and 80s wanted to do the right thing, and they gave this product to their young growing children, a purely profit-driven product with detrimental impact on health. Post-World War II, this model started to change. The model turned customer-centric or the pull economy. This model still driven by profit first. And in my opinion, none of these models would be achieving synergy and communication between producer and via the food value chain. So where to from here? For starters, replacing profit with purpose. So replacing profit with purpose, what does this mean within the context of the consumer? Providing food to family or loved ones. The purpose of any consumer moves far beyond just providing food on the table to life partners, friends, and family. It's not about filling hungry bellies. Merely providing food on the table does not drive value. What drives value is what the food can potentially provide, and that being health and well-being, supporting the purpose of the customer. And herein I feel lies the opportunity in achieving synergy and communication between producer and consumer via the food value stream. So moving away from the traditional value chain, which is transactional, separative, and degenerative in nature, to a more inclusive, interdependent, and regenerative value stream, as in regenerative agriculture, so too does a regenerative value stream have guiding principles. And I'll list 5 of them, being nodal, mutualism, holism, developmental, evolutionary, and uniqueness. I think if I just pick up on one, like nodalism, I think during this covert crisis, one would have seen in the States that I think they've only got 9 major abattoirs, and there was a threat of a shortage of meat within the country. There wasn't a lack of animals, but it was just a lack of decentralized system. So because of their system being totally centralized, it created a weakness within the food chain. So back to the opportunities within the value stream between producer and consumer. Like with all healthy relationships, someone must go first. In this case, it's the producer, knowing that the purpose of the consumer is to nurture the health and well-being of the family unit. So the producer can provide food with high nutritional value. Regenerative agriculture is synonymous with food holding high nutritional value. If we look at the breakdown of the family budget that each family has each month, let's look at the health-related costs. And here I include food purchases, nutritional supplements, and medical bills. Now, a study showed one would need to eat 8 or 9 oranges today, you'd have to eat 8 oranges today to derive the same amount of vitamin A as our grandparents would have gotten from just 1. This theme carries across all nutrients in different greater or lesser percentages across the food chain. The producer, through a short value supply stream direct to customer or through stakeholders, can drive the message home that because their produce has a higher nutritional value, the need for nutritional supplements will be reduced, if not eliminated. There will be an improvement in general well-being of the consumer, reducing the possibility of unwanted medical bills. And these savings can be moved upstream through the consumer being willing to pay more for high nutritional value produce to the producer. So this very relationship now connects the producer with the consumer. As with all healthy relationships, a level of trust needs to be built directly with producer and consumer. And here, a system like iScore or independent auditing organizations that track outcomes in soil health, biodiversity, and ecosystem function on an annual basis. So to really wrap up, Professor James Booknote helped me a bit here, but I wanted to redefine the food value chain to food value stream, and what would that be in a definition? And I'll read this very carefully. A self-reproducing and maintaining agricultural value-enhancing organism comprising a range of interactive agents seeking to enhance life and value addition at all levels and scales, including the biophysical, social, and organizational spheres. So if you are a producer or a farmer, find your place in those words I've just quoted. If you are a consumer, find your place in those words I've just quoted. And if you are a role linking consumer and producer, find your place in those words so that we can all enjoy the fruits that are born of synergy and communication between producer and consumer via the food value chain, also known as food value stream. So there's just a few words from my side, Peter.
Christian, thank you so much. I think you've given us so much food for thought, and obviously the content of your definition will be shared at a later stage, and I think we can discuss this and carry on. Our next question is directed towards Irida. Now, Irida is a television content producer. She's a commentator on culinary culture. She's a newspaper columnist and an author of 10 cookbooks. The latest book, Share, focuses on community-shared recipes. Irida, yes, my question to you is, what is the difference between fast food and story food? And is it driven by social media?
Thanks, everyone, and for being here. Food has the power to connect us to the world and to ourselves. It makes us human, and it starts with the nourishment of mother's milk, that chicken bone or the rusk we chew on in cutting our baby teeth. Then later, it's through eating together with other people that we form further connections and become social beings. We also build our rituals around food. There's hardly a communal human act, a celebration, a feast, or a funeral that doesn't involve food. And this brings me to the story of the food. I hope they bring up that beautiful, delicious looking leg of lamb. Otherwise, I'm going to talk. There it is. Easter Sunday lunch in lockdown. I took great care to prepare the leg of lamb with roast quince and all the trimmings. My trusted butcher shares my belief in ethical food. So I knew it was raised with integrity, that it comes from Williston, naturally seasoned by the bosses it grazed on. Produce is good. Ask for simple preparation, some salt and coriander. It's also deserving of my time. So I spent 3 hours roasting it along with quince, which was a seasonal treat from a farm nearby. And although I was cooking on my own, I wasn't really alone, as every dish of story food stands on the shoulders of the cooks who came before us, preserving their skills for a next generation. It also represented the caring farmers and the small-scale producers who brought it from the soil and the felt to my table. But now on to fast food. And here I refer to the factory-made, the mostly mass-produced, highly processed, homogeneous food. It's not without advantages, explaining its total dominance. It's convenient, it's cheap, it's readily available and supposed to save us time. It's even programmed to taste nice. So it's always so strongly flavored, lots of sugar, salt, artificial flavorings, and additives, which I find hard to pronounce even. But fast food is fleeting, and it may take the craving away, but it adds little, if anything, to our sense of well-being. And I would say, in terms of the food world, fast food is the one-night stand, making you regret the morning after. In short, fast food has become the flavor of modern life, isolating our society from the vital processes of growing, raising, and preparing food ethically. And this brings us to COVID-19. This gives us a first-hand experience of just how dependent we are on this broken food system and how vulnerable it leaves us. The pace at which we had to adjust and change our behavior around food is astounding. It seems as if change that would otherwise take a decade, a generation even, took hold instantly. How we shop, how to economize, how to cut waste, how to prepare food in a new way, and even disinfect our produce as we go along, apart from the hand washing all the time, which is a good thing. In the first few weeks of lockdown, I noticed on my blog and on my social platforms that the demand skyrocketed for recipes, how to prepare comfort food, the familiar and the simple, how to preserve food and all those traditional skills, and of course, how to bake your own bread. And that we started to bake bread again and even nurturing our own yeast plants. That's everyone except me, I can't keep it alive. That came as no surprise, as it goes deeper than just the therapy.
Hi, Rita, we've lost you. Are you still there? Hello, Irida. Can anybody else hear me at this stage? Yeah,
Yes, we
we're
can
all
hear
there.
you.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Irida, we've lost you, Irida. Irida? It's got stuck with Irida. Is Irida still speaking? I can't hear her.
Yes, Peter, it seems Rita is experiencing technical difficulties. Maybe we can move on in the interim to one of the other panelists.
Okay, I think so. I thought it was just me in rural Eastern Cape that lost her. Yes, our next speaker, and I will put on the slides that we have planned for Gary. Now, is Gary Jackson from Jackson's Real Food Market. Gary is a real food activist. So I never thought we'd have on a food panel, we'll have an activist. And Gary, this is exactly how I sum you up. He runs 2,000 square meters of retail space in the north of Johannesburg. He provides an alternative food supply which is sourced from organic, local, and regenerative farmers and producers. He also showcases this produce in the eateries at both locations in Bryanston and in Kyalami. Now, Gary, we're going to look at your food pledges that you have drawn up and that you run your business principles upon. But my question to you is, how do we create an open relationship from producer to consumer? And how do we understand the value chain or the value stream, as Christian referred to it, in the world's broken food system? Gary, over to you.
Thanks, Pete, and thanks for having me on the panel. We take our role as retailers as really serious, and I think even post-COVID, it's even become even more serious. We really do need to step up, and I'm calling this out to all retailers. There's a lot more that we should be doing. We've got 8 pledges, and they grow all the time. I think we're already up to about 12. Some of them are on the screen. But in summary, there's 4 main things that we look at. And the first one, where we always start, is nutrient density. That has to be at the core of everything that we do. The second thing is fair pricing. And when we talk about fair pricing, we mean a fair price to the producer, a fair price for the customer, and a fair margin for the retailer. So that's another key thing. The other one is to shop local and obviously try and support your local communities. The third one is great taste. It's important, and we cannot forget, and I think with modern food, a lot of the taste is eroded by all the additives that are thrown into the food. And then the last one is the one that's closest to my heart, and that is the traceability and transparency of food. And your big food retailers don't expose who they buy from, where they buy from, or how it's really reared or grown or produced. So we're calling for an opening of the farm gate. There should be a far more transparent system in the food business. And, you know, we can do this with technology. We can do this by educating people. So there's a whole lot that we can do. And I think the key thing that's coming through on this webinar is that soil integrity is at the real starting Gemini of real food. So without soil integrity, you can't have food integrity. So the things, Pete, that we do, and where I think retailers need to come to the party in a bigger way, is through customer education. And I want to be a bit more specific about what I mean. I'm talking about sharing the stories of the farmers, sharing the personalities of the farmers to the public. I'm talking about reducing GMO, explaining what GMOs are, explaining what pesticides are and what they do and how they can harm food, reduce the consumption of processed foods, the use of colorants, the use of all these unnatural processes that we contaminate our food with. And then lastly, gut biome. You know, most poor health comes from poor gut biomes. And if you don't reset your gut biome, you are going to end up with a chronic illness. So we have a huge responsibility to share more, not only our experience, but professionals like we have on the panel today. So essentially, just to wrap up, we're talking about the customer of the future needs to pay for the following. Number one, nutrient density. Number two, taste, as opposed to buying by the kilo. And before, your unit of measure was how much food could you get for the least amount of money. We're now talking about turning that on its head and saying how much taste and nutrients can you get for your money, as opposed to just filling you up. So we advocate a total alternative food supply that will run parallel. Our challenge, though, is to get more shops like ourselves and get other people on board so that we can link retail floor space to the farmers and producers. And I guess that wraps up my main message.
Gary, thank you so much. That is the powerful message from the retail side. And yes, we're going into Irida. I see you are back on. Sorry we lost you, but with time left at the end of our session, we will come back and just ask a question again. I think you made your point very, very, very well. Our next question is directed to Apsi Francois. Now, Apsi, you're sitting there with your partner, or not partner, but business partner, Louis Mateza from Local Grill in Parkhurst. So nice to see you. Apsi, having grown up in the Eastern Cape, and having grown up in the Eastern Cape, she was brought up in a culinary rich, dynamic family that sets the foundation to our exceptional ambition and passions. Her father was a strong leader, and from a young age, they were exposed to the inner workings of being an entrepreneur. Now, Apsi is currently the CEO of Fresh Yum. And Apsi, my question to you is food trends. What influences you and Louis in your business of catering? What in designing a menu for a food event? Can you elaborate on that for us, please? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Yes, so I'm Apsi Pantra, and this is Louis Mateza. So we've got a collaboration called African Culinary Library, where we've come together to showcase what's happening in the culinary space on the continent. And obviously it feeds a lot into native produce, what's actually growing on the continent. So when it comes to food trends, from a catering perspective, I mean, we work with a collaboration of, when it comes to fresh produce. So where the farmer from Lady Fresh, she actually sources everything that is currently growing, you know, like with the different, she's got about a community of about 20 different farmers in the Gauteng area. So that's obviously when we're working in Gauteng, we do operate nationally. And so like, depending on what she says is in season, and I mean, we're in direct communication with her daily, we would then amend our menus to that. And we've got the freedom to do that in the catering space, because with catering clients, which are mainly corporates and then some private clients, they kind of like depend on our guidance in terms of what we produce for them. So obviously there's what is the event about, what time the event is, the audience, etc. But when it comes to the menu, we definitely influenced by what is growing and available at that time. And I mean, in the restaurant space, I mean, with Louis.
Hi, good afternoon, or is it morning still? Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Morning still.
As part of the Local Grill, and also particularly as a member of the African Culinary Library, we are searching to find more ingredients that are native to Africa. and how can we make those ingredients mainstream? Because if those ingredients are readily and available in abundance, it's our duty then to introduce people to those produce and make it familiar versus and that helps in the development of sustainable agriculture, where produce is growing in a native environment and is being consumed in seasonality versus throughout the year in a bulk production, focus.
Louis, thank you. Absi, I can't resist myself just asking you a question specifically about your menu for Youth Day, for 16th, that you advertised on social media. I just found that fascinating, and I'm sorry we didn't, I'm a little bit BC. I couldn't get that slide on with that menu, but just talk us through that menu, please, that you advertised for Youth Day.
Okay, perfect. So as African Culinary Library, we collaborate with chefs. So we've taken, firstly, we're only about just shy of 3 weeks old. We launched on Africa Day, which was on the 25th of May. And what we're doing is, so for Youth Day specifically, so it was 2 young chefs, Chef Vusi Ndlovu and Chef Ken. So they came up with their take on what youth in 1976 was experiencing, and also collaborating what is happening with cuisine on the continent. So for example, we had a kota with Nigerian spiced lamb. So I mean, lamb in South Africa is it's quite huge, and then the fact that we added a twist with the Nigerian spices to it, which was suya. That brought in a bit of continental feel to it. And I mean, we had chicken yassa, which is a Senegalese dish. We've been playing around a lot with different flavors from the continent. And everything is, I mean, what we try and do is everything is seasonal, And I mean, so that is like our take on grilled chicken, the chicken yassa. And and then we also had puff-puffs, which is amagwinya, fed cooks, for, I think that's the local, the familiar name of them.
Amagwinya is better, yeah.
Yes. And then we had hibiscus jam. And I mean, in South Africa, we don't use a lot of hibiscus, but we do, we have it. So it's available to us. So we're trying to use what is popular on the continent and obviously what is available in South Africa. So to bring in that whole teaching everyone about what's happening with culinary on the continent.
Absolutely, thank you. We'll come back to that given time, but it's fantastic. I couldn't believe my eyes, and I think you had knickknacks in the in the game as well. But anyway, we'll get back to that later. Our next panelist we want to direct our question is Professor Arno Higo. Now, this is going more onto the scientific side of things. He's a professor in the Food Science Division of the University of the Free State. He's specializing in meat science and food chemistry. He's a special interest in the lipid component of meat and meat products. Now, this whole cholesterol debate we're talking about. Now, he's author and co-author of 140 peer-reviewed scientific articles and 150 papers at national and international congresses. He supervised and co-supervised 70 MSc and PhD students. Now, Arno, if I may call you that, we wanted to touch on traceability. Why is it important, and why should it be communicated?
Thanks for the kind introduction, Peter. I appreciate the opportunity to do a presentation at this Heal the Land, Heal the People webinar. Just a little bit of background. One of the latest trends in the market for food products is the desire amongst consumers to know the origin of the food product they purchase and to be physically or emotionally connected to the farm and the producer. The consumer's need for origin-based food is now playing out in a variety of ways as food processors and retailers are labeling their products according to the origin of the product. One way of achieving this is a good traceability system. So I'm going to focus in my short presentation on traceability from the meat industry perspective. But the same principles are applicable to all other foods. Despite the consumer's emotional need to connect with the farm and producer, food traceability is also extremely important from a food security and food safety point of view. Now, why is traceability important? One only has to think back to the 2018 Listeria outbreak in the processed meat industry in South Africa to realize how important traceability is. If we had the proper traceability systems in place back then, the source of the problem could have been pinpointed much easier and earlier, and lives could have been saved. So when marketing, for example, meat brands like free range, grass-fed, veld-reared, hormone-free, naturally produced, or even organically produced, proper traceability systems are extremely important to ensure the integrity of the product. Integrity is a critical component of such product claims. The consumer must have a guarantee that he will receive what he is paying a premium for. Now, what should be communicated to consumers? What information and guarantees do the consumer want from a traceability system? Consumer want to know, was the animal raised and handled in a humane and ethical manner? You want to know, was the animal slaughtered and the meat harvested in a humane and ethical manner? Is the product of good quality? Can the producer, for example, guarantee tender meat? Generally, one can say that traceability is good for food quality. And the reason for that is in a traceability system, you cannot mark in anonymity anymore. Product is linked to the producer. So an inferior quality product can therefore be linked to a specific producer. Remember, consumers choose with their feet. The consumer also wants to know, is the product safe? Isn't it going to make him ill? You want to know that there's no E. coli, salmonella, listeria, mad cow disease, dioxins, avian influenza, pesticides, heavy metals, radioactive isotopes, antibiotics, and hormones in his food. Nowadays, they're also interested to know if the food is maybe of genetically modified origin. Modern consumer also want to know if you buy a hamburger patty, if it is not originated from cultured meat. Remember, they can grow meat in the laboratory now. The consumer also want to know, is nutritional information on the label correct regarding minerals, vitamins, proteins, fat content, saturated fatty acids, omega-3 fatty acids, cholesterol, and things like that. Now, briefly, how does the traceability system work? If you want to look at the meat industry, up to the abattoir, traceability is relatively simple. In its simplest form, traceability is limited to record keeping of suppliers and customers, allowing reconstruction of the product chain in case of need, a one-step back forward kind of approach. In Europe, some 25 million cattle per year are now slaughtered with full traceability. Therefore, it is doable. But one must remember that the meat carcass is different in that it is disassembled before sale. What begin as an entire carcass, and before that, an intact animal can end up in the form of 500 or more retail pieces in different places and at different times. The challenge of providing a secure form of identity through this process is therefore a formidable one. But this is achieved and can be achieved with the use of modern technologies such as blockchain technology and DNA technology. Just to conclude, such integrated approach comprises all of the components that have an impact on safety of food on each level of the food chain from farm to fork. And this approach demands the interaction of all the participants of the food chain from producer to individual consumer. The consumer wants somebody to be responsible if his animal welfare, product quality, and product expectations are not met. And that is why we need a good traceability system. Thank you.
Prof, thank you so much. I think our listeners are perhaps, totally confused now because we are banging in a lot of information into this hour session. But surely we're going to follow up on these conversations, and we'll have questions. I see they are flying, you know, that we will then direct directly to the panelists. Prof, thank you so much again. Our next contributor and panelist is Andrea du Plessis. She's a registered dietitian with a passion for healthcare through nutrition and an active lifestyle. Her goal is to inspire and empower people to make healthy choices and enjoy a healthy lifestyle through science-based guidelines. Andrea, my question to you was, are we selling volume, or are we selling nutrition? And how do we make informed decisions about what we eat? Looking forward to what you're saying to us.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's really been an interesting session, so it's a privilege to participate. I think your first question about producing and selling volume or nutrition, it's very clear from the previous discussions that there's a definite move towards more nutritious foods, which is very inspiring. I mean, I think of the principle of you are what you eat. And it's encouraging to hear how agricultural practices are incorporating this principle in the actual production of food, with a focus on the soil integrity and feed quality, of course. So I think for a long time, food has been regarded by many people as something to sustain life, and many people see food as a source of pleasure. So if you think about this and combine that with the fact that we want to eat all the seasonal products all year round, I think this has resulted in the production of foods that are not optimal in terms of our nutritional content.
I was on a meeting, so they ran away.
It's not only the flavor of the fresh produce that is better within the natural season that is supposed to grow, but the nutrient density is also much higher. And I think Gary Jackson mentioned that nutrient density and great taste, those are priority attributes for the food within his retail business. And gosh, that excites me greatly. So hopefully that will definitely catch on as a big trend. So the rise of food technology and agricultural practices that enable maximum yield, on the other hand, has introduced measures that can actually dilute nutritional content without the consumer knowing about this. If you think of examples like the premature picking of fruits that are kept under controlled storage to prevent ripening, these fruits are then ripened according to demand in retail, often months or sometimes even up to a year after being harvested. So the big problem with this is that the food never develops its optimal nutritional density and also not its optimal flavor components that it would get through natural ripening. And then obviously the prolonged storage is not ideal for fresh produce. Another example is the injecting brine or salt water into chicken portions to increase or improve the texture. The first problem I have with that is I'm paying for salt water per kilogram if I buy chicken meat that contains the brine. But the other problem from a nutritional point of view is the brine dissolves water-soluble nutrients, which is lost through the cooking process. So that in that way diluting the nutritional content of your chicken meat. Another one which still I think is a big problem, we spoke about baking, or Irida spoke about baking earlier, and it's fantastic to see how people are going for more natural flours. But if you think, many people still like their white flour, and if you think of grains and removing the husks from the grains to produce this beautiful white refined flour, you lose a multitude of valuable nutrients that are actually stuck to or within the husk of these grains. And I think there's there are these trends towards natural food production with high nutrient density, but there's still a very high representation. If you look at a shopping trolley, if you stand in a queue in retail, very high representation of processed foods, and a very low representation of raw unprocessed foods. So the second question you asked was about how do we make informed decisions about what we eat. And I find it fascinating to think about the fact that it has taken science decades to prove that eating foods in their most natural form provides the best nutritional quality. if I think of all the research that has gone into actually proving something that we instinctively should know. And this, of course, like I said, starts with the production of the ingredients in the foods we eat. So the trending of healthy food and organic produce and the move to raw foods has definitely increased the consumer's awareness of the benefits of eating these foods, getting more plates. And the increased awareness of the higher nutritional quality of unprocessed foods has sparked interest with many consumers that now opt for more natural ingredients to feed their families. I mean, healthy eating is a very prominent trend, and all the celebrity chefs delight us with delicious recipes using natural and raw ingredients. I mean, as a dietitian, 20 years ago, my job was very painful because people thought I would take all pleasure away from them. And thanks to the creativity of chefs, we can now introduce ideas of serving healthy, nutritious raw foods. And they don't necessarily have to be raw, but very nutritious foods for your family in an enjoyable way without compromising the enjoyment of food. And these days, looking at nutritional information and guidelines, there are so many registered dietitians and other health practitioners that give out advice about healthy eating. And this really is easily available on various online platforms, television shows, YouTube channels, etc. So I think it's an exciting phase for me as a dietitian to see how the consumer is embracing healthy eating. So that's all from my side.
Thank you so far. I hope we're going to come back, but I also can't resist asking you or just making a statement on this. And then remember, I might get a hiding about this, but we've also developed in the food industry, we've developed a spice and a flavorant industry that is huge, because we tend to produce foods in the fast industrial way that are tasteless, you know, that you could actually start, maybe look at cooking a piece of cardboard and adding the spices and make it taste like a 28-day-old aged steak. You know, this is what always concerns me. But thank you. Let's try and get through our panelists. We've got 2 more questions to go. Our next panelist up is Stephen Barnard. Now, Stephen, it's been very exciting and interesting meeting you, and we've got a lot to talk about still, so as all the other panelists. But Stephen, in short, is a retired lieutenant colonel in the South African Defence Force. He's the founder of the Institute of Rural and Community, IRCD. In 2012, he's initiated Garden of Life as a micro-farming program as a mechanism for local economic development in rural and peri-urban areas. He launched the Farmer Kids Project as a program to facilitate self-sustainable food production amongst the youth of South Africa and Africa. He's presently initiating projects through the South Africa with Garden with Life and Farmer Kids in fighting poverty and hunger. Now, Stephen, my question to you, why is it important to connect children with food production?
Thank you, Peter. I just wish I could take all these panelists and dehydrate them, and every time I have a workship, just add water, because there's so much knowledge, and it's great being part of the team. Yeah. A bit of background, in the 70s and 80s, I operated in various parts of Southern Africa. And you know, one of the things which really got to me as a soldier is the day which I held a little boy of 5 months old, and he died of dehydration while I was, and hunger while I was busy holding him. That had an impact as a young man. And when I had the opportunity to make a difference, I took it with both hands, and we launched the Garden of Life program in 2007. Now, if we have a look at the impact of COVID-19, and this hasn't just come today, it's been going for some time, we are sitting with hunger and poverty in our townships and in our rural areas that is frightening. There are children right now, not even 5 kilometers from where I stay in Mamelodi, that are going to school, or when they were going to school, but are today with a slice of bread and a cup of tea. And that's all food that they are getting. We actually had a project, and have got a project that's running down in Richards Bay at a primary school, where there are 900 pupils, and 450 of them are fed every day from that school. Now with the shutdown, you know, they were sitting with a problem. Now, fortunately, a company called SME sponsored us to go in, and we built a food production unit. And the principal sent me photos of where she's putting fresh vegetables out of their garden, which is now being used to feed those children. So the whole focus of Farmer Kids is if I can use the Xhosa and Zulu, umsebenzi. Umsebenzi means that I want a job. And this is how we, for generations, have been trained that we have to be educated so that we can find a job, so that we can work. We have to change that. It's not what God intended us to be. He intended us to be producers. So our focus with the young people is to train them umsebenzi imali, which means I want to work to make money. And how do we do that? We believe that if we can create a new generation of young farmers that grow their own food and become agricultural entrepreneurs. Now, we've done this. We've done it for the last 10 years, and those are just a few of the photos which are on the screen now of some of the projects where we've developed a very, very simple hydroponic system. We train the children up in one day. And if you look at the top right-hand side of that slide, that is at a school for disabled children, where children in wheelchairs, you'll see there's little paths there. Children in wheelchairs were able to produce their own food because of the simplicity of what we do. If you go on to the next slide, Peter, you got my next slide?
It's coming.
So our focus with Farmer Kids is to say, how do we infuse the present education system with teaching children the basic skills of farming, entrepreneurship, and then support that with technology. Now, we've created the Farmer Kids programs. We've over 20 programs that are on YouTube. You can go onto it right now. You type in the word Farmer Kids with a Z, and it gives you all of the training from how to start your garden, how to grow seedlings, all the way through into 15 different vegetables, how to plant and grow them. So we have specific objectives, which we focus on. On the next slide, you can then see where we have our specific objectives then being we want to create an awareness in the youth in terms of the need for farming as a sustainable source of food. Now, I see hundreds, if not thousands of children every year. And when you talk about farming, they all look at you with big eyes. And they say, I don't want to be a farmer. Peter, you are a farmer. And we've listened to the wonderful stories of a lot of farmers today. But the youth are focused on saying, I need to ride a big car, I need to live in a nice fancy house, and I need a cell phone. We're saying, let's change this thinking, because children don't realize where food actually comes from today. I mean, Rita would not be able to do some of those mouth-watering menus which she's got there if you do not have a farmer on the ground. And we're sitting with a major crisis in that 60% of our farmers are over the age of 60. So in the next 20 years, there aren't going to be farmers. We're going to have a problem. Secondly, we focus on the development of the children's awareness of the environment and natural resources. Now, part of the training that we do, we actually take earthworms. We take them into the class and we give the children the earthworms to hold. You will not believe how many of these children actually run away, because the one little boy shouted, "Hey, snake!" and he ran away. Children don't know earthworms. They don't know the need for the various soil zones that have to be nurtured. And then it goes about creating a sense of responsibility and interest in the production of food. Now, the previous slide you saw at one school in Tembisa, where it's a creche, where we train the schools. When the children arrive, they actually are given a packet of seeds and a tire and said, right, that's your tire to look after for the next 3-4 years. And they produce their own food. Now, at one of the prize givings, I'm normally invited every year. One of the parents came up to me and said to me, Mr. Barnard, you're the vegetable guy. I said, that's right. He says, I'm angry with you. I said, why? What did I do? He said, no, my daughter came home with this beautiful cabbage. And I took it from her. She said, Dad, I grew this cabbage at school. And we said, all right. And he took the cabbage from her. He says, now give me 10 Rand for my cabbage. So we teach the children that they can play at a young age a role in becoming food, a part of the food chain, the food production chain. Secondly, interpersonal skills is critical, and you'll find that once the children and the teachers start working together in maintaining the farm, in looking after the farm, we put them 2-2-2 on a tire or on a pallet or in the ground. Those skills of saying, all right, I've got a certain responsibility, you've got a certain responsibility, and they grow their vegetables together, but they receive the reward together as well. Very important. And then using technology through the YouTube channels which we've created, anybody can now go back and if they need to find anything on how to grow the techniques, it's all there. It's available right now. And then lastly, to invoke a love for nature and the outdoors, and tell children that farming is actually fun. If you get out there and you can do this and you can produce your own food. Now, we've got a couple of chefs here today. I'm also a member of the SA Chefs organization. Thomas Overbeck, do you know him, Rita? Thomas is the CEO, and he's actually pulled us in to say to us, but start producing a farm to fork program. In other words, teaching children that once you have grown your vegetables, by adding value to those vegetables, you can now sell it in your community. Just to give you a quick example before I round off, Mamelodi has approximately 15 funeral parlors that each have between 30 and 40 funerals per month, and there are over 200 to 300 people that attend those funerals. Now, you know, and one of the panelists said how important food is at a funeral. I mean, if the food's not good, we don't know where that guy's going to go. Eh? That's a joke, by the way. So you always, I've been to a lot of funerals in the communities. Food plays a critical role. Now, just in Mamelodi, the money spent on funerals, food, is over 2.5 million Rand a month. Who's producing that food? And that's the question I asked, because the whole issue with regard to developing this mindset of saying, but let us become producers, let us become the future generation of farmers, and you can farm on a small scale. We've done it for the last 12 years. We've had ladies taking their tires and on 1 hectare of ground producing over 15,000 Rand a month. People that had no employment, no previous skills of farming. So it gives us great pleasure in going into the rural areas, in going into the townships, sharing these skills and seeing these young children grab the opportunity to take control of their own futures. Because if they don't, no one's going to look after them. And with a close on to 50% unemployment rate facing us with the COVID-19, I think it's time that we've got to change our way of thinking and our way of tackling this problem. Thank you.
Stephen, so great listening to you. I think everybody is hanging on your lips, and you know, I wish we had time. We are running short. We're getting to Tozy soon, our last panelist. We won't have time for coming back with questions though, but you know, I just found it fascinating how you, even in this time that we are in lockdown, that you've directed some of your projects via the cell phone, you know, with your communities, and the fact how you taught them to dance and to show with hand. I wish we could do that, but we can set up another workshop for that, I'm sure. Stephen, well, thank you so much for your
information. You can contact me anytime, and I'm welcome to share.
Yeah. There's the Farmer Kids contact information on your screens, and please connect with Stephen. He's doing some great work. Our last panelist, and Tozi Zakufa, is also an Eastern Cape boy. Tozi is a recognized animal welfare consultant. He's not an animal for welfare activist, guys. There's a big difference in the news at the moment. He's working nationally, regionally, and internationally, mainly in the field of farm animals. For 9 years, he's worked at abattoir level in the private sector and the National Department of Agriculture as a meat inspector as well. I'm going to give over to, he was at Compassion in World Farming when I got to meet him, where they were talking about the Meat-Free Mondays launch, but Tozi has come to senses, if I would say, excuse me for the pun, Tozi, but yeah, Tozi is with the Greener World, which I mentioned before, who is an international certification body that on your screen there you can see what they are certifying currently. And Tozi, yes, for me now, what we've heard through this whole past hour is, you know, the way we produce food. Now, will you tell us why certification is important and verification in food production?
Of course, and Gosimawawa, and afternoon, everyone. It's been a great lot of information right from 8 o'clock, and I know some of us are a little bit tired, but the break is soon. I'm the last speaker before the break. I just wanted maybe to just give a bit of a background, Mawawa, as into what or who is a greener world, and then of course I will just talk on those 5 points that are listed there. A greener world identifies, audits, certifies, and also promotes practical, sustainable farming system by supporting farmers and informing consumers. So we play a dual role in talking to the farmer and also talking to the consumers. Our growing family of trusted certifications include those that are listed there: certified animal welfare approved by Greener World, certified grass-fed by Greener World, certified regenerative by Greener World, salmon welfare certified by Greener World, certified organic by Greener World, and lastly, certified non-GMO by Greener World. I'm not sure of the farmers who are on this webinar, but some farmers do not want a Christmas tree on their product. So here is a one-stop shop, you know, for all of these programs. Of course, each program is designed to have a positive and measurable impacts on the environment, the society at large, and also the animals. The Greener World standards and procedures are robust, they are transparent, they are also achievable. We are currently working with over 6,000 farmers around the globe promoting truly sustainable regenerative farming practices. As an independent non-profit farm certifier, we actually visit the farms we certify every year to ensure that they are meeting high standards of welfare and sustainability. We have been certifying farms for over a decade in the US specifically, and are working with thousands of farmers globally now in the US, of course, Canada, South Africa, and Europe. And I must add here that there's been some interest now from India, New Zealand, and Australia. Now, if I were to dwell into these 5 items that are listed there, the consumer confidence, I mean, this needs no introduction, really. People want to know where their food comes from. It's been mentioned, but labels at times can be confusing. Reliable, meaningful third-party certification like those offered by Greener World gives shoppers and consumers the information they need to make informed decisions. Truly regenerative agriculture is pasture-based and validated. Meaningful labeling helps people to choose meat, dairy, and eggs from animals raised outdoors, on pasture, on range, which has known benefits for our health and also, of course, the environment. The second one is high welfare. Certified animal welfare approved by Greener World is the foundation of all of other livestock certification. So here I need to explain that there's no way that you can be certified non-organic or rather certified non-GMO without you meeting animal welfare approved certification. This is only the truly pasture-based welfare label in South Africa. I mean, no cages, no crates, no feedlots, not even certified organic can offer this assurance at this stage. Animal welfare approved is ranked as one of the top 5 fastest growing certification and labels claims according to SPINS, the leading information and service provider for the natural and specialty products industry. Now, the third one, Mawawa, is environmentally sustainable. A greener world believes sustainability is defined by the system and not necessarily the product itself, but from farm to fork, we've heard that being mentioned previously. All of our standards are designed to deliver meaningful environmental outcomes. Certified regenerative by a greener world helps farms to continually improve towards a balanced ecosystem, partnering with farms and regenerate soil, water, air, cropping systems, livestock, biodiversity, wild harvested resources, and also communities. And then the fourth one is highly meaningful. Our standard certification speaks for themselves, but we are also recognized by our peers and our consumer advocates that are out there. Animal welfare approved has been acknowledged by consumer reports as the only highly meaningful food label for farm animal welfare, outdoor access and sustainability as well. And our forthcoming label, certified regenerative by a greener world, has been praised by a leading farm group as the most comprehensive system that they have seen. So lastly would be, the previous speakers have also touched on this, is transparency. Just as a greener world audits and certifies farms, we are also audited and accredited to an international standard. ISO is the certifier of the certifier, and ISO 17065 is specifically designed to ensure that a certification body is operating in a consistent and reliable manner in all aspects of its work. A greener world certified farms benefit from this transparency through the use of respected, recognizable, independently verified label claim. So in closing, Mawawa, I can say that we are working with farms across South Africa and are very excited to welcome new farms and businesses to the program. We invite everyone and anyone who's interested to getting certified or finding sustainable food or suppliers to get in touch with us. We're looking forward to being a partner in regenerative food and farming throughout the country, especially the farmers who have shared this day, half a day with us today. And of course, we are very thankful for this opportunity to share with everyone what is it that we do. Thank you. And go Sidata.
Tozy, thank you. And just for those that don't understand, you hear that Tozy is calling me Mawawa. That is a Xhosa thing. That is my clan name in Xhosa. So I'm sorry, we share a little bit of our Eastern Cape culture. Tozy, that was great. You're a natural presenter. I think most of us can go and look at the Greener World website. There's a Greener World SA, and there's a Greener World, obviously, .org. That is national. International, but yes, fantastic, guys. Yes, unfortunately, I promised that we would come back to some questions, or I think we've got a lot to talk about. I think, if I may say myself, we've got a powerful panel put together here, and I think this is not the end of our conversation. And what I take from it is the connection between the producer, the retailer, and the consumer is of utmost importance, and it must happen right now. Thank you once again to our panelists. I'm going to hand over to Prof. James Blichnout again. I think I'm sorry for the participants, but we're running a little bit over time, so there won't be a break. So off to the next session. James, are you there?